The morning sun cast long shadows across my 5-acre property as I walked toward the fence line, coffee mug warming my hands. 3 of my rescue horses, Belle, Dakota, and Thunder, grazed peacefully in the pasture, their coats gleaming in the early light. After 22 years working in animal welfare, with the last 8 as County Animal Control Director, moments like these reminded me why I had chosen this isolated corner of Willowbrook Estates. When I bought this property 3 years ago, the realtor had been upfront about the HOA restrictions.
Agricultural use is permitted on lots over 3 acres, she had explained, showing me the covenant documents. Your horses will be perfectly legal. The previous owner had kept cattle, and the infrastructure was already in place. Barn, fencing, water systems.
It seemed like paradise for someone who had dedicated her career to animal rescue and rehabilitation. I had just finished my morning inspection when I heard the crunch of gravel in my driveway. A silver BMW pulled up, and out stepped a woman I recognized. From the monthly HOA meetings I rarely attended, Margaret Thornfield, the self-appointed Community Standards Coordinator, though I was not sure that was an official position.
"Excuse me," she called, marching toward me with the confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed. She was impeccably dressed for 8 in the morning, blazer, pressed slacks, not a hair out of place. "I need to speak with you about those animals." I set down my coffee mug on the fence post. "Good morning, Margaret. What can I help you with?" "Do not call me Margaret. It is Mrs. Thornfield to you." Her voice carried the sharp edge of someone who viewed basic courtesy as a sign of weakness.
"These horses are a violation of our community standards. This is a residential neighborhood, not a barnyard." I kept my voice level, professional, a skill developed through years of dealing with difficult people in stressful situations. Actually, the HOA covenants specifically allow agricultural use on properties over 3 acres. I reviewed all the documentation before purchasing. Her face flushed slightly. "Those old rules do not apply anymore. We have updated standards now, Waddenborg." "Standards? I will not have this neighborhood turned into some kind of farm." "Could you show me the updated documentation? I would be happy to review any changes to the covenants." "I do not need to show you anything," she snapped. "I am telling you that these animals need to go. Property values are at stake here. Do you understand what that means?" The horses had moved closer to the fence, curious about the raised voices. Belle, a gentle mare I had rescued from a neglect case 2 years ago, nickered softly. Margaret stepped back as if the horse might leap the fence and attack her. "These are well-cared-for animals on a property that is zoned and covenanted for their presence," I said calmly. "They pose no threat to anyone or anything, including property values." "We will see about that." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "I have connections in this county, important connections. If you do not remove these animals voluntarily, I will make sure they are removed for you." She spun on her heel and stalked back to her BMW, gravel spraying as she accelerated out of my driveway. I watched her go, a familiar feeling settling in my stomach, the same feeling I got when investigating animal cruelty cases where the perpetrator thought their social status would protect them. I picked up my coffee and took a slow sip, looking out at my horses. In my professional life, I had dealt with people like Margaret Thornfield before, people who believed that volume and authority could override facts and law. They usually learned otherwise, though it often took time and patience. What Margaret did not know, what none of my neighbors knew really, was that I had spent over 2 decades building a reputation in animal welfare. I kept my professional life separate from my personal life, introducing myself simply as Sarah at community gatherings. Most people assumed I worked some mundane office job that allowed me to afford this property. Thunder, my newest rescue, trotted over to the fence. He had been seized from a case involving illegal horse trading just 6 months ago. The investigation had taken 2 years to build, but when we finally moved, we shut down an operation that had been abusing animals across 3 counties. Patience and methodical work had been key to that success. I scratched Thunder's neck and made a mental note to review the current HOA documentation that evening. Margaret's confidence suggested she had something specific in mind, and in my experience, people like her rarely made empty threats. They escalated instead, each move becoming more desperate and overreaching than the last. The irony was not lost on me. After years of protecting animals from people who thought they were above the law, I had apparently moved next door to one. 3 days later, I was mucking out stalls when I heard vehicles in my driveway. Not just one vehicle, several. I walked around the barn to find 2 HOA board members, a man with a clipboard who looked like some kind of inspector, and Margaret Thornfield herself, arms crossed and wearing the expression of someone about to deliver a killing blow. Sarah Chen called out Robert Hayes, the HOA president. He was a decent enough man in normal circumstances, though clearly uncomfortable with whatever was happening. "We need to discuss your animals." I pulled off my work gloves and approached the group. The man with the clipboard was taking photos of Teat, barn, my fencing, and my horses. "What can I do for you, Robert?" Margaret stepped forward before he could answer. "We have had multiple complaints about odors, noise, and safety concerns regarding your horses. The board has voted to require an immediate inspection of your facilities." "I was not aware of any vote," I said. "When did this board meeting take place?" Robert shifted uncomfortably. "Well, it was an emergency telephone vote. Margaret brought some serious concerns to our attention, and we felt immediate action was necessary." The inspector, his shirt identified him as being from Premier Property Assessments, continued taking photos. I recognized the company name. From some less than stellar encounters in my professional life, they specialized in finding violations where none existed, usually for clients willing to pay premium rates for predetermined conclusions. "What specific complaints have been filed?" I asked. Margaret produced a folder thick with papers. 15 separate complaints in the past week. Odors affecting neighboring properties, noise disturbances in early morning hours, concerns about disease transmission, and questions about proper waste disposal. I kept my expression neutral, though internally I was impressed. 15 complaints in a week about horses that had been here for 3 years without issue. That took organization and creativity. "I would like to see those complaint forms," I said. "That is not necessary," Margaret replied quickly. "The inspector will determine if violations exist. If they do, you will have 30 days to remove the
animals or face legal action." The inspector finished his photo session and approached us.
"Ma'am, I need to inform you that I will be filing a report with the county regarding potential agricultural use violations in a residential zone." This was interesting. "Which county department?" "Animal Control and Zoning. They will be conducting their own investigation." I nodded thoughtfully. "I see. And when might that investigation begin?" "Within the next week, I would expect." Robert looked between Margaret and me, clearly sensing undercurrents he did not understand. "Sarah, is there anything you want to tell us? Any way we can resolve this amicably?" Before I could answer, Margaret cut in. "The only resolution is removal of these animals. This is a residential community with standards to maintain. We cannot
have every homeowner deciding they want to run a farm." I looked at the group assembled in my driveway. Margaret with her triumphant expression, the inspector packing up his camera, Robert trying to play peacemaker.
They had no idea what they had just set in motion. "I understand your concerns," I said. "I will certainly cooperate with any county investigation. Animal welfare and proper agricultural practices are very important to me." Margaret's smile widened. "Good. I am glad you are finally being reasonable." After they left, I walked back to check on my horses. Belle approached the fence, sensing my tension. He stroked her neck and pulled out my phone. My first call was to my assistant director, Miguel Santos. "Miguel, it is Sarah. I need you to pull the Premier Property Assessment file from our database. I want to know every case they have been involved with in the past 2 years. The inspection company? They are not exactly our favorite people." "Exactly. Also, I need you to flag any animal control complaints that come in regarding my address, handle them personally, and document everything." Trouble in the neighborhood? You could say that. Someone is about to learn that filing false reports with county agencies is a serious matter. My second call was to Tom Bradley, my friend at the county attorney's office. We had worked together on dozens of animal cruelty cases over the years. Tom, I need a favor. Can you pull the current HOA covenants? For Willowbrook Estates? I want to know if there have been any recent amendments or changes. Sure thing. Any particular reason? Let us just say I'm about to become very interested in HOA governance and compliance. That evening, I spread the original HOA documents across my kitchen table. 22 years of investigating had taught me to read contracts and legal documents with a fine-tooth comb. The agricultural use provision was clear and unambiguous. More importantly, the amendment process required a 2/3 vote of all homeowners, not just board members, and required 30 days' notice. I made detailed notes and photographed every relevant page. If Margaret wanted to play legal games, she had picked the wrong opponent. But I was not ready to reveal my hand yet. In my experience, people like Margaret were their own worst enemies when given enough rope. The inspector's threat to contact animal control was particularly amusing. I made a note to review our complaint procedures with staff. It would be educational to see exactly what kind of report Premier Property Assessments would file. The county investigation Margaret had requested came sooner than expected. Tuesday morning, an animal control vehicle pulled into my driveway. I watched from my kitchen window as Officer Jessica Reeves climbed out, clipboard in hand. Jessica was one of my best officers, thorough, professional, and completely by the book. I let her conduct her inspection without interference, curious to see what she would find. I knew my facilities better than anyone, but it was always good to get a fresh set of eyes. Jessica spent 45 minutes examining the barn, the fencing, the water systems, and the pasture. She took measurements, photographs, and detailed notes. When she finished, she knocked on my back door. "Ma'am, I am Officer Reeves with County Animal Control. I need to discuss the inspection with you." I opened the door, staying in character. Of course. Is there a problem? Jessica consulted her clipboard. "I have completed a thorough inspection of your facilities in response to multiple complaints filed with our office. I need to inform you that I found no violations of county animal welfare regulations. Your facilities exceed minimum standards in every category." That is good to hear. What were the specific complaints? Inadequate shelter, improper waste management, overcrowding, and signs of neglect or abuse. Jessica's expression was professionally neutral, but I could see the slight confusion in her eyes. The complaints were so far from reality that they bordered on absurd. "I see. What happens now?" "I will file my report stating that no violations were found. However, if additional complaints are filed, we may need to conduct follow-up inspections." After Jessica left, I called Miguel. "How many complaints came in about my address?" 17 in the past week. All from different names, but the language is almost identical. Someone coached these people on what to say. Were they all from Willowbrook Estates residents? That is the interesting part. Only 5 are from your neighborhood. The rest are from addresses scattered across the county. A few do not even appear to be real addresses. This was getting better by the minute. Filing false reports with a government agency was a crime. Coaching others to file false reports was conspiracy. Margaret was building my case for me. "Miguel, I need you to do something for me, but keep it quiet. Start a formal investigation file on fraudulent animal control reporting. Document everything, the Premier Property Assessment connection, the coordinated nature of the complaints, the false addresses."
"Are you sure about this, Sarah? This could get complicated." "It is already complicated, but I want this done by the book. If charges are eventually filed, I want the cassetto be airtight." That afternoon, Tom Bradley called me back. "Sarah, you
need to see these HOA documents. Can you meet me for coffee?" We met at a small cafe downtown, away from both the courthouse and my neighborhood. Tom spread several documents across our corner table. "Your HOA has some serious problems," he said. First, there have been no formal amendments to the covenants. The agricultural use provision is still valid and unchanged. Second, this Margaret Thornfield has been operating as if she has official authority she does not actually possess. What do you mean? She has been sending official-looking letters on HOA letterhead claiming to represent board decisions that never happened. I found 3 instances in the past year where she made unilateral decisions and presented them as board actions after the fact. Tom showed me copies of correspondence I had never seen. Margaret had been running a one-woman campaign to eliminate agricultural use from the entire development. She had sent letters to the County Planning Commission, the Zoning Board, and even the State Agricultural Department, claiming the HO wanted to revoke agricultural zoning for the entire subdivision. The problem is, Tom continued, she does not have the authority to make those requests, and some of the statements in these letters are demonstrably false, such as, she claimed that agricultural use was causing water contamination affecting the entire neighborhood. She cited environmental studies that do not exist and referenced county health department findings that were never made. I stared at the documents. Margaret had not just targeted me, she had been conducting a systematic campaign of misinformation involving multiple government agencies. This was far more serious than a simple HOA dispute. Tom, what are the legal implications of filing false reports with government agencies? Depends on the scale and intent. If someone knowingly files false information to trigger government investigations or regulatory action, that is usually a misdemeanor. But if there is a pattern of false filings or if it involves conspiracy with others, it can become a felony. I photographed every document Tom showed me, my mind already working through the implications. Margaret had created a paper trail that would be every prosecutor's dream. She had been so confident in her authority and connections that she had documented her own illegal activities. There is one more thing, Tom said. I did some checking on this Premier Property Assessments company. They have been the subject of multiple complaints to the Better Business Bureau and the State Licensing Board. Apparently, they specialize in finding violations that support predetermined conclusions. Are they legitimate? Technically, yes, but their methods are questionable, and their reports have been thrown out of court several times for bias and inaccuracy. That evening, I sat in my barn with Belle, brushing her coat while I processed everything I had learned. Margaret had built an impressive conspiracy involving fake complaints, false government filings, and a corrupt inspection company. She had done it all with supreme confidence, never imagining that her actions might have serious legal consequences. The irony was perfect. After decades of investigating animal welfare cases, I was now the subject of false animal welfare complaints. The very expertise Margaret was trying to use against me would be the tool of a downfall. I pulled out my phone and made one more call for the day. Miguel, tomorrow I want you to start reaching out to our contacts at other agencies. I want to...
No, every false filing Margaret Thornfield has made in the past year. Environmental health, zoning, agricultural department, all of it. This is getting big, Sarah. It was always big. We are just now seeing the full scope.
Margaret's next move came exactly 1 week later, and it was her biggest mistake yet. I was feeding the horses Thursday morning when 3 county sheriff's vehicles pulled into my driveway, followed by a truck from animal control, though not one
of ours. Sheriff Deputy Mike Johnson approached me with what looked like a court order. Ma'am, I need to speak with you about your animals. We have received reports of serious animal welfare violations, and I have an order here for immediate seizure pending investigation. I accepted the documents and read them carefully. The order had been issued by Judge Patricia Hendricks, whom I knew to be fair but thorough. The complaint alleged that I was operating an unlicensed commercial animal facility, housing animals in substandard conditions, and violating multiple county health and safety regulations. Deputy Johnson, can you tell me who filed this complaint? The paperwork shows it was filed by Margaret Thornfield on behalf of the Willowbrook Estates HOA, with supporting documentation from Premier Property Assessments
and several other complainants. The animal control officer with them was someone I did not recognize, a tall man with Stevens County Animal Control on his shirt. We were in Riverside County, which made his presence very interesting. "Excuse me," I said to the Stevens County officer. "Can you explain your jurisdiction here?" He looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, we were contacted by Premier Property Assessments and told that Riverside County Animal Control was not responding appropriately to serious violations. We were asked to provide an independent assessment. This was remarkable. Margaret had convinced an animal control agency from a neighboring county to cross jurisdictional lines based on false information. That was a new level of overreach, even for her. Deputy Johnson, I need to make a phone call before any action is taken. As the property owner, I believe I have that right." "Of course, ma'am, but please make it quick. We have our orders." I dialed Miguel's direct line. "Miguel, this is Sarah. I am at my property with sheriff's deputies and an animal control officer from Stevens County. They have a seizure order based on false complaints." "Stevens County? What are they doing in our jurisdiction? Apparently, they were told we were not doing our jobs. Can you get down here immediately and bring the file we have been building?"
On the fraudulent complaints. "On my way. Sarah, do you want me to not yet, but it is almost time." While I waited for Miguel, I watched the Stevens County officer examine my facilities.
His expression grew increasingly puzzled as he found the same thing Jessica Reeves had found, a setup that exceeded every standard by a significant margin. Margaret's BMW pulled into my driveway 10 minutes later. She climbed out wearing her victory smile, clearly expecting to watch my horses being loaded into trailers. "I told you this would happen," she announced to anyone within hearing distance. "This neighborhood has standards and they will be enforced." Deputy Johnson looked between us. "Ma'am, are you Margaret Thornfield?" "I am Mrs. Thornfield, yes. I filed the complaint that led to this action. It is about time someone took animal welfare seriously in this county." Miguel's truck pulled up at that moment, followed by a second vehicle carrying 2 more of my officers. Miguel climbed out and walked directly to me, his expression carefully neutral. "Sarah, what is the situation?" Deputy Johnson stepped forward. "Are you with Riverside County Animal Control?" "I am Assistant Director Miguel Santos. This is my jurisdiction and I need to understand what is happening here." The Stevens County officer approached Miguel. "We were told that Riverside County was not responding to serious animal welfare violations at this address. We were asked to provide independent verification." Miguel looked at him with genuine confusion. "Who told you that?" "Premier Property Assessments. They said they had contacted your office multiple times without response." "That is impossible," Miguel said. "We have conducted 2 inspections of this property in the past month. Both found no violations. In fact, this facility is among the best private animal care operations in our county." Margaret's smile faltered slightly. "That is ridiculous. These animals are clearly being kept in substandard conditions." Miguel walked over to examine my barn and fencing, making a show of the inspection. After a few minutes, he returned to the group. "Deputy Johnson, I need to inform you that the complaint leading to this seizure order appears to be based on false information. Our office has conducted thorough inspections of this facility and found it to exceed all standards. Furthermore, we
have been investigating a pattern of fraudulent reports targeting this address." "What kind of fraudulent reports?" Deputy Johnson asked. It was time. I looked at Margaret, who was beginning to realize that things were not going according to her
plan. "Miguel, I think it is time to make some introductions. Deputy Johnson, Mrs. Thornfield, this is Assistant Director Miguel Santos of Riverside County Animal Control. Miguel, I would like you to meet Margaret Thornfield, who has been filing false reports about animal welfare violations at my property." Margaret looked confused. "What does that have to do with anything?" Miguel smiled. "Mrs. Thornfield, I would like you to meet my boss. This is Director Sarah Chen of Riverside County Animal Control. The silence that followed was profound. Margaret stared
at me, her face cycling through confusion, realization, and horror.
The Stevens County officer looked like he wanted to disappear. Deputy Johnson actually chuckled. "You are the Director of Animal Control?" Margaret whispered. "I am. And for the past month, you have been filing false reports with my office, claiming that I am violating animal welfare laws on my own property. That is a crime, Mrs. Thornfield. Several crimes, actually." Margaret's face went white. I did not know." "Of course you did not know. You assumed that because I keep a low profile in the neighborhood, I must be someone you could intimidate and manipulate. You never bothered to find out who you were dealing with." Miguel handed Deputy Johnson a thick file. "These are copies of 17 false reports filed with our office in the past month, all targeting Director Chen's property. We have also documented false filings with multiple other county agencies, all containing demonstrably false information." The Stevens County officer approached me. "Ma'am, I apologize. We were given false information about the situation here and about your county's response. This appears to be a jurisdictional misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," I said. "Mrs. Thornfield deliberately misled you to try to circumvent our investigation. That is conspiracy to file false reports, and it crosses county lines, which makes it more serious." Margaret found her voice. "This is harassment. I was acting in good faith to protect our neighborhood." "No, Mrs. Thornfield. Filing false reports is not good faith. Coaching others to file false reports is not good faith. Lying to government agencies about environmental contamination and health hazards is not good faith. It is criminal behavior." Deputy Johnson was reading through Miguel's file. "Director Chen, what do you want to do about this?" I looked at Margaret, who was now clearly panicking. "I want to file formal charges for filing false reports, conspiracy and fraud. This has gone far beyond a neighborhood dispute." Within 24 hours of Margaret's exposure, everything began unraveling for her at an accelerated pace. The news that the woman who had been crusading against my horses was actually harassing the county animal control director spread through Willowbrook Estates like wildfire. My phone started ringing Friday morning with calls from neighbors I barely knew. "Sarah, this is Janet Morrison from Elm Street. I need to apologize. Margaret Thornfield came to me last week asking me to sign a complaint about your horses. She told me you were running some kind of illegal breeding operation." "Mrs. Morrison, did you sign anything?" "Yes, and I feel terrible about it now. She said it was just a petition to have someone come look at the situation. I had no idea she was filing false reports with the county." This conversation repeated itself. Throughout the day, Margaret had canvassed the entire neighborhood, collecting signatures under false pretenses. Some residents thought they were signing a petition for increased animal control services. Others believed they were supporting an investigation into potential health hazards. None of them knew they were participating in filing false reports with government agencies. Miguel called me around noon. "Sarah, you need to see what we found in Margaret Thornfield's background." I met him at the office, where he had spread several files across the conference table. "Margaret has been doing this for years," he said. "Not just here, but in her previous neighborhood in Stevens County. We contacted their animal control office, and they remember her well." The Stevens County file painted a disturbing picture. Margaret had waged a 2-year campaign against a neighbor who kept chickens legally on their property. She had filed dozens of false reports, hired private investigators to document non-existent violations, and eventually sued the neighbor in civil court. The case was dismissed when it was discovered that Margaret had falsified evidence and coached witnesses to lie under oath. "She moved here right after that case was dismissed," Miguel continued, "and apparently she learned from her mistakes. This time, she tried to be more sophisticated, using a corrupt inspection company, recruiting neighbors as unwitting accomplices, and filing reports with multiple agencies to make it look more legitimate." What happened to her previous neighbor, the chicken owner? They ended up moving out of state. The harassment was so intense that they could not continue living there, even though they won the legal battle. This was a pattern I recognized from domestic violence cases, systematic harassment designed to force someone from their home. Margaret was not just overzealous about neighborhood standards, she was a serial harasser who had driven at least one family from their home. That afternoon, Tom Bradley called with more bad news for Margaret. Sarah, I have been digging deeper into Margaret's HOA activities. She has been embezzling from the association for at least 18 months. Embezzling how? She set up a fake vendor account for community consulting services and has been billing the HOA for work that was never performed. We are talking about nearly $15,000 in fraudulent charges. The scope of Margaret's criminal activity was expanding by the hour. False reports, conspiracy, fraud, and now embezzlement. She had been so confident in her ability to manipulate systems and people that she'd created evidence of her crimes in multiple jurisdictions. Saturday morning brought Margaret's most desperate move yet. I was in the barn when I heard shouting from the direction of my house. I walked outside to find Margaret in my backyard, bolt cutters in hand, attempting to cut the lock on my gate. "What are you doing on my property, Margaret?" She spun around, her face wild with panic and anger. "These animals are dangerous. I am protecting the neighborhood." "By breaking into my property, someone has to do something. You think because you have some government job that you can do whatever you want, but I will not let you destroy our community." I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, keeping my eyes on Margaret. She was holding the bolt cutters like a weapon, and her behavior was becoming increasingly erratic. "This is Director Sarah Chen at 1247 Oakwood Drive. I need officers to respond to a trespassing and attempted breaking and entering in progress." "You cannot call the police on me," Margaret screamed. "I am protecting everyone from you." "Mrs. Thornfield, you are on my property without permission, attempting to damage my facilities. That is criminal trespass and vandalism." She looked around wildly, as if just realizing where she was. I was just... "You were just committing another crime."
How many crimes are you planning to commit before you realize you cannot win this?
Deputy Johnson arrived within 10 minutes, followed by 2 more patrol cars. Margaret was still standing in my backyard, bolt cutters at her feet, looking like someone who had just woken up from a nightmare. "Mrs. Thornfield," Deputy Johnson said, approaching her carefully, "I need you to step away from the property and put your hands where I can see them." "This is all wrong," Margaret said, but she complied. "She is the one breaking the law. She is ruining our neighborhood. Ma'am, you are on someone else's property without permission, with tools apparently intended to damage their facilities. That is criminal trespass and attempted vandalism." As Margaret was handcuffed and placed in the patrol car, neighbors began gathering along the street. The woman who had positioned herself as the guardian of community standards was being arrested in broad daylight for breaking into a neighbor's property. Robert Hayes, the HOA president, approached me as the patrol cars were leaving. "Sarah, I owe you an apology. I had no idea Margaret was operating outside her authority or that she was doing any of this. Robert, the board needs to conduct a full audit of Margaret's activities. Based on what I am learning, she may have been committing
fraud against the association itself." His face paled. "What kind of fraud?" "Financial fraud, for starters."
"But also fraud in representation, claiming board authority she did not have, filing official-looking documents without board approval, that kind of thing. What do we need to do? Get a lawyer, a good one, and probably an accountant. Margaret has created legal liability for the entire association." The legal proceedings moved quickly once the full scope of Margaret's activities became clear. She was charged with 17 counts of filing false reports, conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement, criminal trespass, and attempted vandalism. The charges spanned 2 counties and involved multiple agencies. I testified at her preliminary hearing, presenting the evidence my office had gathered over the previous weeks. The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Linda Walsh, had built an airtight case, Your Honor, she said. The defendant conducted a systematic campaign of harassment against Director Chen, involving false reports to multiple government agencies, fraudulent use of a corrupt inspection company, conspiracy with unwitting accomplices, and ultimately criminal trespass when her other methods failed. Margaret's attorney tried to argue that she was acting in good faith to protect her neighborhood, but the evidence was overwhelming. The false addresses on complaints, the coached language in reports, the embezzlement from the HOA, it all painted a picture of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Judge Hendricks was particularly stern during sentencing. Mrs. Thornfield, you have wasted significant government resources, harassed a dedicated public servant, and committed fraud against your own neighbors. Your actions show a pattern of escalating criminal behavior that cannot be excused as community activism. Margaret received 18 months in county jail, 3 years probation, and was ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA and to the county for the cost of the false investigations. She was also banned from holding any position in any homeowners association for 10 years. Premier Property Assessments lost their license after our investigation revealed a pattern of fraudulent reporting. The owner was charged separately for his role in the conspiracy. The Stevens County Animal Control Officer, who had crossed jurisdictional lines, received additional training on proper procedures and inter-agency cooperation. Their department implemented new policies to prevent similar incidents, but the most satisfying outcome was what happened in the neighborhood itself. Once the truth came out, the community rallied around proper animal welfare and responsible pet ownership. Several neighbors asked me to help them evaluate their own properties for potential animal rescue activities. Robert Hayes apologized formally on behalf of the HOA board and invited me to join as an advisor on animal-related issues. The board also updated their procedures to prevent any individual from claiming authority they did not possess. 6 months later, I was in my pasture with Belle, Dakota, and Thunder when I noticed a for sale sign going up across the street. A young family with 2 dogs was looking at the property, asking the realtor about pet policies and animal-friendly features. I walked over to introduce myself. Hi, I am Sarah Chen. I live across the street with my 3 horses. The husband's eyes lit up. Horses, that is wonderful. We were hoping to find a neighborhood that was animal-friendly. Very animal-friendly, I assured him. We have excellent community standards now. The realtor looked confused for a moment. Then recognition dawned
on her face. Wait, are you the Sarah Chen, the one who... Well, the Margaret Thornfield situation? I smiled.
I prefer to think of it as the situation where we learned the importance of facts over assumptions. That evening I sat on my back porch, watching my horses graze in the golden sunset light. After 22 years in animal welfare, I had seen through every kind of cruelty and neglect imaginable, but I had also learned that most problems came from ignorance rather than malice. Margaret Thornfield had been different. She had been genuinely malicious, using her position and influence to harm others for her own sense of control. But even she had ultimately been defeated by these same tools I used in every case: patience, thorough investigation, and letting people hang themselves with their own actions. My phone buzzed with a text from Miguel. New complaint came in today. Someone in Pine Valley claims their neighbor is keeping tigers illegally. Want to guess who filed the report? I laughed and typed back, please tell me it is not another HOA board member. Worse, it is a city council member. I shook my head and smiled. Some people never learned. But that was okay. I had all the patience in the world and 22 years of experience dealing with people who thought they were above the law. Belle whinnied softly from the pasture, as if reminding me that no matter what human drama swirled around us, the animals still needed their dinner. I stood up, brushed off my jeans and walked toward the barn. After all, That was what this had always been about, taking care of animals and protecting them from people who thought rules did not apply to them. Margaret Thornfield had learned otherwise, and now my horses could graze in peace, secure in the knowledge that their home was protected by more than just fences and gates. It was protected by the law, properly applied and patiently enforced. And sometimes that was the most satisfying justice of all. Have you ever dealt with someone who thought their authority or connections put them above the rules? What was your experience? Share your story in the comments below. I would love to hear how you handled your own difficult neighbor situations.